Public backlash against CEO Elon Musk's political positions.
Sales are down 50% year over year. China's sales were down 50%.
In the last couple months, though, the stock's just been obliterated.
Elon Musk just got blindsided by the last countries anyone expected, Mexico and Canada. In the span of just 8 weeks, Tesla didn't just lose market share, it lost everything. Federal rebates vanished. Raw materials were frozen. Entire supply chains were weaponized. And what started as a trade dispute became a full-blown collapse of America's most iconic tech brand. This isn't about bad sales or bad PR. This is a geopolitical nightmare, and Elon walked straight into it. Tesla's factories are stalling. Its stock is imploding. And the allies who once powered Musk's empire are now tearing it apart. Why did Mexico and Canada turn on Tesla? How did Elon lose control of his global empire? And could this be the beginning of America's biggest economic fallout in decades? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll see why Tesla may never recover from this. What's happening? In early April of 2025, the Canadian Ministry of Natural Resources issued a press release that sounded more like a footnote than a threat. It announced a temporary reassessment of electric vehicle rebate eligibility, specifically targeting US-built models. But within 48 hours, it became clear Tesla was being cut off. Canada canceled all pending rebates for Tesla vehicles, 43 million Canadian dollars, frozen overnight. Consumers who had already placed orders were left in limbo. Dealerships across Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal saw appointments vanish. It was a surgical strike, and its message was unmistakable. This was retaliation, and Tesla was the target. But Ottawa wasn't done. In a separate legislative maneuver, Canadian provinces began restricting exports of critical minerals used in EV battery production: nickel, cobalt, and lithium. For Tesla, which relied on Canadian mining firms for its Nevada and Texas gigafactories, this was catastrophic. It wasn't just that prices went up, it was that shipments stopped. Canadian suppliers, under pressure from both provincial and federal directives, diverted contracts to European automakers, and Tesla, it was left stranded, looking inward for solutions that didn't exist. Publicly, Musk tried to downplay the significance, but behind closed doors, Tesla executives scrambled to rework logistics, begging for exemptions and fast-tracking alternative sourcing contracts from South America and Africa, both of which required months of setup and carried far greater risk. Meanwhile, Canadian officials made no secret of their motives. During a televised debate, one MP stated flatly, "Tesla profited from Canada's resources. They backed the policies that punished us. Why should we help them now?" Within 3 weeks, Tesla's deliveries to Canada dropped by over 60%. By the end of the quarter, Canadian sales had all but vanished. But Canada was only the beginning, and across the Atlantic, another betrayal was brewing. Europe's strategic strike. Europe's response wasn't emotional. It was strategic, calculated, and brutal. In late April, the European Commission announced a new tariff package targeting US-manufactured electric vehicles, effective immediately. The justification was framed around economic self-defense in response to American tariffs, but the target was clear: Tesla. Model Y units arriving in Rotterdam were held in customs limbo. Pre-orders across France, Italy, and Germany were canceled en masse. Tesla's access to Europe, its second most lucrative market, was effectively over. But the real damage wasn't from taxes, it was from politics. In Berlin, Paris, and Rome, government subsidy programs began quietly removing Tesla from eligibility. New EV buyer incentives were now restricted to domestically produced vehicles that promote regional economic stability, which meant Volkswagen, Stellantis, Renault. Suddenly, buying a Tesla in Europe cost thousands more than buying a homegrown competitor. At the same time, Europe's biggest automaker was making its move. Volkswagen, whose EV strategy had long played second fiddle to Tesla's flashier headlines, now had the chance to dominate the continent. It offered lower prices, no tariffs, and local supply chains. And European consumers, amid a rising wave of nationalism and anti-American sentiment, embraced the switch. Tesla wasn't just outpriced, it was outpositioned, outmaneuvered, and out of time. Back in the US, Tesla's export numbers to Europe plummeted. Inventory ballooned. Factory output had to be throttled. Layoffs were quietly introduced in logistics departments. But the data told the real story. Tesla's European revenue fell by nearly 40% in a single quarter. We're connecting global policy to factory shutdowns and brand implosions. Live, step by step. This isn't a recap. It's the playbook unfolding. If that's helping you stay ahead, subscribe now. Still, Musk remained defiant. He blamed protectionism, He blamed bureaucracy. But even he couldn't control what came next, because what began as political retaliation was about to erupt into a cultural revolt right in Tesla's own backyard. And Elon Musk's next move? It ignited a firestorm, the brand that broke itself. Tesla didn't fall because of competition. It didn't fall because of trade wars, tariffs, or broken supply chains. It fell because of its founder. In the middle of a global firestorm, factories stalling, investors fleeing, and entire markets turning hostile, Elon Musk chose to pick a fight with the world, not behind closed doors, not through strategy, but live online, in full view of the people who once believed in him. It started with a smirk. In an interview meant to calm nerves, Musk was asked if Tesla could weather the economic retaliation from Canada and Europe. His response? If you don't like the volatility, don't buy Tesla. It wasn't confidence, it was contempt, and it sent shockwaves through Wall Street. Instead of diplomacy, Musk took to Twitter with memes and personal insults. He accused Canada of economic treason, claimed Europe was colluding with legacy auto, and mocked regulators as bureaucratic parasites. These weren't off-the-cuff comments, they were declarations. And they didn't just alienate governments, they alienated customers. Videos surfaced of Tesla owners smashing their cars, spray painting Trader Tech across their hoods. Dealerships in swing states saw angry crowds, canceled appointments, and slashed ad budgets. And it wasn't just the left. Conservatives questioned Musk's globalist sourcing and erratic behavior. Progressives saw a billionaire drunk on power. Independents saw chaos. Online forums, once shrines to Musk's genius, turned cold. We believed in the mission, one user wrote. But this isn't a mission anymore. It's a meltdown. Inside Tesla, board members urged restraint. Investors begged for silence, but Musk refused. People want the truth, he insisted. But what they got was volatility, vitriol, and paranoia. By the end of the quarter, Tesla's brand wasn't just damaged, it was radioactive. Loyalty had curdled into resentment. The dream had become a meme, and while Musk was spiraling, the factory floor exploded. The revolt that built the cars, they built the dream. Then they watched it fall apart on the factory floor, in their paychecks, and in the silence from the top. At Tesla's gigafactories in Texas, Nevada, and California, the shift didn't begin with walkouts. It began with something smaller, quieter. A missing bonus, an extra overnight shift, a supervisor dodging questions about layoffs. Tesla's workforce had endured the chaos. Erratic schedules, tight deadlines, safety issues, because they believed in the mission. They were building the future, and one day they were told it would pay off. But by spring of 2025, the dream had curdled. Stock options were now worthless. Overtime went unpaid, and when performance bonuses were postponed due to market volatility, the message was clear: loyalty no longer paid. That's when it snapped. In Austin, workers at the battery line walked off mid-shift. In Sparks, Nevada, floor managers begged teams to stay while quietly preparing severance plans. And in Fremont, Tesla's original home, technicians posted anonymous videos of malfunctioning robots, missing safety guards, and 16-hour shifts. The posts went viral. The signs were everywhere. We build it. We deserve better. Elon got his billions. We got burnout. Workers weren't just fed up. They felt abandoned. Internal memos leaked, hot meals canceled, counseling programs axed, morale shattered. Layoffs spread quietly through battery, software, and logistics teams. And competitors, Rivian, Lucid, even Hyundai pounced, scooping up Tesla's talent with better hours, better pay, and basic respect. Tesla's production lines slowed. Attrition skyrocketed. Union organizers, long frozen out by Musk's anti-labor stance, returned, this time with momentum. Rallies broke out in Ohio, Michigan, and California. Chants echoed, "We built this, you broke it." This wasn't just a factory problem. It was an uprising, a mutiny. And it was the one thing Elon Musk couldn't tweet away. Because you can fight governments, you can fight Wall Street, but when you lose the people who build your empire, there's nothing left to save. And then the global supply network stopped answering Tesla's calls. Broken supply chain diplomacy. Tesla's supply chain had always been a miracle of timing, precision, and international trust. But when that trust fractured, the entire machine ground to a halt. The first cracks came from Canada. Nickel and cobalt suppliers, once key battery partners, were hit with new export restrictions imposed by the Canadian government. And while the official explanation was regulatory reassessment, everyone knew the truth. This was political payback. Next came Europe. A German electronics firm, one of Tesla's top sensor providers, terminated its contract, citing credit exposure and strategic misalignment. A French aluminum manufacturer refused to fulfill its delivery quota without advance payment. These weren't isolated cases. They were symptoms of a collapsing ecosystem. To compensate, Tesla scrambled to find replacements, but sourcing high-precision parts from secondary vendors meant delays. Requalifying new materials meant weeks of testing, and in a company built on just-in-time manufacturing, that was catastrophic. Assembly lines slowed to a crawl. Tesla's vehicle output dropped by almost 30% within a single quarter. Logistics teams worked overtime to reroute shipments through friendlier jurisdictions. But customs backlogs and tariff spikes made every delivery a gamble. Costs soared, deadlines slipped. The dream of mass EV adoption turned into a logistical nightmare. And as the stock crashed, foreign rivals made their final moves. Volkswagen's master plan. Tesla taught Europe the game. Volkswagen learned how to win it. While Tesla was grappling with trade wars, public backlash, and internal chaos, Volkswagen was executing a plan that had been nearly a decade in the making. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but it was surgical. And by the time Tesla noticed, it was already too late. Volkswagen had spent years quietly building the largest electric vehicle production infrastructure in Europe. They invested billions into battery factories, developed a unified modular EV platform called MEB, and scaled their supply chain with ruthless German efficiency. While Tesla was still pushing a premium-only pricing model and overextending its vertical integration, Volkswagen did something Tesla never managed to do: make electric vehicles accessible at scale. With the MEB platform, Volkswagen could produce everything from compact hatchbacks to SUVs across brands like Audi, Skoda, Cupra, and Seat. They didn't need separate architectures, separate factories, or separate engineering teams for every model. It was plug-and-play efficiency at a level that even Tesla's celebrated gigafactories couldn't replicate. That meant one thing: Volkswagen could undercut Tesla on price while still delivering quality, volume, and profit. And then came the kill shot. As Europe imposed retaliatory tariffs on American electric vehicles and pulled subsidies away from Tesla, Volkswagen did not just benefit, they took over. In Germany, France, Italy, and Spain, the average consumer suddenly saw Tesla as an overpriced outsider. Meanwhile, Volkswagen appeared as the homegrown champion: cheaper, easier to service, and politically safer to support. When Elon Musk's comments about European regulators and tariffs went viral, accusing them of economic sabotage, Volkswagen did not say a word. They didn't need to. Tesla's brand had already been turned into a political target. Volkswagen simply showed up with the keys to a cheaper, subsidized, and more politically acceptable alternative. By the second quarter of 2025, Tesla's European sales had plummeted by more than 38%. Meanwhile, Volkswagen's EV registrations surged by over 42% year over year. The Model 3 and Model Y, once considered the default EVs for the European middle class, were now being outpaced by the ID.4, the Cupra-born, and the Audi Q4 e-tron. But it wasn't just about numbers, it was about control. Volkswagen owned its raw material contracts, its local battery production, and its compliance with new EU sustainability standards. Tesla, they were importing aluminum from tariffed markets and waiting on battery materials from countries that no longer wanted to sell to them. Volkswagen didn't just beat Tesla on design or tech, they beat them on geography, regulation, cost, and trust. And as Tesla scrambled to retain its shrinking foothold in Europe, Volkswagen was already preparing its next move: expansion into Latin America and deeper EV penetration in North America. But Europe wasn't Tesla's only blind spot. The BYD Doctrine. While Tesla burned, China built a global empire. In the United States and Europe, most people still think of Tesla as the global leader in electric vehicles. But in China, that myth died years ago. And in 2025, it was buried for good. Because while Tesla was losing battles across the West, BYD was winning the war everywhere else. Build Your Dreams, better known as BYD, was not just another car company. It was a vertically integrated juggernaut backed by the Chinese government and laser-focused on global dominance. While Tesla relied on international suppliers for key components, BYD built nearly everything in-house: batteries, chips, inverters, body parts, even the software stack. That vertical integration wasn't just efficient, it was invincible in a world gripped by trade wars. When Canada and Europe cut off Tesla's access to lithium, cobalt, and nickel, BYD simply tapped its domestic supply and existing state-backed reserves. When US-China tensions threatened international supply chains, BYD didn't blink. It was already 3 steps ahead. But BYD's most brilliant move was its export strategy. As Tesla's prices soared due to tariffs and shipping costs, BYD flooded markets in Asia, Africa, and South America with affordable EVs that delivered reliable performance and low maintenance costs. Governments in Brazil, Thailand, and South Africa began offering tax credits specifically for BYD vehicles. Municipalities rewrote procurement contracts to favor Chinese models. Infrastructure investments, charging station partnerships, and mass transit collaborations followed. And in the final stroke of irony, BYD began targeting the very countries that once celebrated Tesla. In Canada and parts of Europe, BYD signed agreements to supply fleet vehicles to government agencies. In Mexico, it opened talks for manufacturing expansion. In the United States, BYD didn't even need to sell directly. Its dominance in battery and bus production was already reshaping logistics and municipal transit. Tesla's image as the innovative leader of the EV revolution was now being replaced by something far more dangerous: irrelevance. While Musk feuded on social media and attacked world leaders, BYD kept building. It quietly surpassed Tesla in global EV deliveries. It secured long-term mineral contracts in Africa. It captured the trust of developing economies that were never on Tesla's radar. And then came the psychological shift. In global consumer perception, BYD was no longer playing catch-up. It was setting the pace. It was the brand governments trusted, the company partners respected, and the one consumers could afford. Tesla had pioneered the dream, but BYD had mass-produced it. And just when Tesla thought it had one ally left, it didn't. The Saudi flip. Tesla underestimated the Saudis. That was a billion-dollar mistake. Elon Musk assumed that the Middle East, particularly Saudi Arabia, would remain a silent, supportive partner in Tesla's rise. After all, Saudi investment funds had quietly backed portions of the EV and clean energy market, while turning a blind eye to Musk's controversial persona. But in 2025, that relationship flipped completely, and Tesla was the one caught off guard. It started with Lucid Motors. The Saudi Public Investment Fund already held a majority stake in Lucid, but in the wake of Tesla's collapse, they accelerated their plans. The PIF injected another $3 billion into Lucid, fast-tracked production expansion in Saudi-based gigafactories, and offered massive tax incentives for foreign automakers to partner with Lucid's battery and software divisions. Meanwhile, Tesla was struggling to maintain its material supply chains. Lithium, nickel, and rare earth metals were all being redirected through Saudi intermediaries, under contracts that excluded or deprioritized American buyers. The Saudis had gone from funding the EV dream to selectively weaponizing it, and they weren't subtle about it. Behind the scenes, the PIF was building a new axis of EV development that included Lucid, Canadian raw material suppliers, and Chinese battery tech firms like KATL. The goal was simple: freeze out Tesla, take control of battery geopolitics, and offer the world a cleaner, better-funded alternative. The betrayal was as symbolic as it was strategic. Saudi Arabia had not just moved on from Tesla, it was building the post-Tesla future. And with Tesla locked out, a new trade order emerged: the trade reversal. The United States built the global EV market, then got cut out of it. Once upon a time, America led the charge into electric vehicles. Tesla was the icon, Silicon Valley was the brain trust, and Washington promised to dominate the future of sustainable transportation. But now, just a few years later, that vision had crumbled, and a new global trade order was forming without the United States. Canada, once America's closest partner, had reoriented its mineral exports toward Europe and China. Germany and France had rewritten their national EV roadmaps to exclude American brands and technology. Latin America signed new energy agreements with China, and even neutral players like Australia began hedging away from US-based manufacturers. And the irony? The infrastructure that made Tesla great, international minerals, global manufacturing, open trade, was the same infrastructure that now shut America out. The world was still building electric vehicles, just not with the United States. New economic blocs formed. China, Europe, Canada dominated EV manufacturing, resource extraction, and tech licensing. The US and Mexico, reeling from tariff fallout, found themselves increasingly isolated. U.S. companies faced higher import taxes, less favorable lending terms, and a global consumer base that no longer trusted them. Tesla wasn't just squeezed out of foreign markets. It became a case study in how quickly an industry can abandon a leader that loses its footing. America went from being the EV capital of the world to the country every New Deal excluded. Supply chains were rebuilt, alliances were redrawn, and capital followed the path of least resistance, away from the chaos. And now the collapse was no longer corporate, it was national. The Tesla downfall wasn't just a company's implosion. It was the moment the world stopped waiting for American leadership and started building the future without it. But while workers took to the streets, another kind of collapse was already sweeping across America's financial core, one that reached every household: market mayhem. Tesla's crash triggered a $1 trillion tremor. The numbers didn't lie. In just 6 weeks, Tesla lost over $135 billion in market value. But the real story, the one few saw coming, was what that loss triggered across the broader economy. Because Tesla wasn't just a car company, it was a symbol, a linchpin, and a cornerstone of modern American investment. It wasn't just high-risk tech traders holding the stock. Pension funds had a stake in it too, in retirement portfolios, in ETFs and government-backed investment pools. When Tesla began to fall, it didn't just hurt Elon Musk, it scorched the nest eggs of millions of Americans. By the end of March, the Dow Jones Industrial Average had dropped by more than 9%. The S&P 500 lost over $1.2 trillion in combined market value. Financial analysts compared the Tesla crash to a canary in the coal mine, a signal that the entire tech sector was under siege. Banks tightened lending. Real estate deals collapsed. Mortgage approvals fell off a cliff. For the first time in years, Americans who thought their future was safe began to worry about their 401s, about job security, about the value of the dollar. And it wasn't just investors and retirees feeling the hit. Businesses that had partnered with Tesla, parts suppliers, software vendors, green energy affiliates, began slashing forecasts and freezing hiring. Tech companies with exposure to Tesla's logistics network suddenly faced disruptions. Even state governments that had given Tesla tax breaks were now calculating how much they had lost. Meanwhile, Musk remained defiant in the public eye. He mocked critics, blamed economic sabotage. But behind the scenes, Tesla was in triage. Emergency funding plans failed, credit access dried up, insurance premiums spiked, and still, the market kept tumbling. The U.S. economy, already weakened by trade wars and inflation, now found itself in freefall. Tesla's crash had gone from headline to contagion. And worse, it wasn't over. But the true nightmare wasn't what America lost inside its borders. It was what the rest of the world had decided to leave behind. The end of influence. This wasn't just Tesla's collapse, it was America's economic exile. For over a century, the United States had set the rules of the global economy. Its companies dominated markets, its currency anchored trade, and its innovations shaped the future. But in 2025, something changed. The fall of Tesla didn't just bruise American pride, it shattered its influence. Foreign governments that once depended on U.S. EV innovation were moving on. Canada inked new long-term contracts with European and Chinese battery makers. The European Union passed a resolution accelerating subsidies for regional manufacturers, while simultaneously increasing tariffs on American EV imports. In Asia, Tesla's former supply partners pivoted to BYD and Hyundai. Global trade routes were being rewritten without the United States in mind. Shipping contracts, mining rights, and green energy projects once led by American companies were now being led by consortiums based in Berlin, Shanghai, and Riyadh. America had gone from indispensable to replaceable. The final insult came not in dollars, but in symbolism. In May, a new multilateral clean energy summit convened in Singapore. For the first time, the United States wasn't invited. Instead, representatives from Canada, China, the EU, Brazil, and South Korea signed a cooperative pact to accelerate EV production and infrastructure. Without American participation, America had lost something far more valuable than market share. It had lost trust, and in global economics, trust is everything. So now, standing in the ashes of its most iconic tech brand, America faced a choice, and none of the answers were good. What comes after collapse? America has 3 paths forward, and each one comes with a cost. With Tesla in ruins and global confidence shattered, Washington scrambled to answer the only question that mattered: now what? Privately, officials debated three possible paths. The first was reconciliation, rebuilding alliances with Canada, the European Union, and Asia. This would mean rolling back tariffs, restoring trade deals, and making painful concessions. The political cost would be high. It would require admitting failure, even as election season loomed. But it might restore global stability, if acted on fast enough. The second option was nationalism on overdrive, doubling down on domestic EV production, mining, and manufacturing. It would mean massive subsidies, sweeping deregulation, and a full-scale economic mobilization. But this strategy would take years, and the damage was happening now. Factories can't be built overnight. Lithium doesn't mine itself. Then came the third path, the darkest one. Turn to authoritarian regimes, strike new deals with Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and others offering short-term resource access in exchange for strategic leverage. It would be fast, efficient, and geopolitically dangerous. Depending on volatile partners, could leave America exposed in ways it hasn't been in decades. None of these paths were clean. All came with risks, and every hour that passed without action deepened the crisis. America stood at the crossroads, not just of trade, not just of Tesla, but of its role in the world. The electric vehicle revolution wasn't waiting, and the rest of the world wasn't either, because what's gone now isn't just Tesla, it's trust. Tesla didn't just lose sales, it lost trust, and once that's gone, there's no easy comeback. What do you think? Was this the breaking point? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep dives like this, hit like, smash subscribe, and stay tuned. We're just getting started.